I'm going to show you today how to add a twisted header to the beginning of your woven piece. Now, it's called a twisted header, but it's also known as twining, and you can use it in various different ways, but I refer to it as a twisted header when I'm using it to start and finish my weaving. And I refer to it as twining when I'm using it decoratively in the main body of my work. But it's the same technique, and I'm going to do tutorials on the different ways in which you can use it. But this tutorial, we're just focusing on using it as a header and or footer. So I tend to use the same yarn that I've used to make my warp to do the twisted header with, and it's the most secure way really of starting and finishing your work. It traps your warp threads from all sides, and it just stops the main body of your work from walking around, especially once you've taken it off the loom or you're in the process of taking it off the loom. To create a twisted header, which is also known as twining, I like to use the same yarn that I've used to make my warp out of. This one here is a cabled cotton. I'm using the cabled cotton in this instance as well because it's lighter than the colour of the table, so you'll be able to see slightly more clearly what I'm doing. I also quite like using linen as a warp and weft yarn, mostly because it's more sustainable than cotton. So you're going to start by measuring out 3 widths of your warp. It will really depend on what yarn you've used for your warp as to how much you need, but it's much better with this that you end up with a tiny bit of wastage than you end up running out before the end. So we're going to measure around about 3, 1, 2, 3, and then just cut that off there. You're then going to double over the length of yarn, and you're just going to tuck the top round and underneath that first warp end. Now you're going to use a technique that involves twisting and tucking and twisting and tucking, and some of you will find it easier with your warp in portrait, others of you will find it easier with your warp in landscape, and I'll show you both ways so you can decide which way is easiest for you. So this way you are taking the top thread, twisting it over so it's now on the bottom, and then you're going to tuck the thread that is now on the top under your second warp thread there. So now you're going to twist again and then tuck under the third, and you're going to twist again and then tuck under the fourth. Now you can draw your twisted header now down towards the bottom of your warp, and you can sort of tease out a little and just slide that down to the bottom. I always like to use a cardboard base in my weaving. I think it just really helps you to get that nice straight line to start off with, but you absolutely don't have to, and your twisted header, because it sandwiches the threads so tightly from all directions, as long as you can get a nice straight line across there, it will be a nice solid base as well for your weaving to start on top of. So along the bottom here, you can just, if they're all bunching together a little bit, you can just wiggle them around to get your spacing nice and even. But with this kind of loom as well, with the notches in it, they're quite nice and evenly spaced apart anyway, so you don't have to worry so much about that. The next thing we're going to do is just tidy these loose ends away. And so at the end here, where you've got your top thread, I'm going to just weave that over and under a few threads just to tidy it away. So pull that bottom one, and then it's coming out over the top here, so we're just going to go under, over, just a few threads, it doesn't have to be many. And then we're going to do the same on this bottom one here, which is coming out underneath that last warp thread. And so we're just going to weave the opposite, so we're going to go over, under, over, and we'll just post that needle through the back, pulling the loose end through, and just slide those down towards the bottom. I'm also going to show you quickly how to do it in landscape. It's exactly the same way as this, but in my head it makes more sense to work towards you with this technique. I find it easier, but then I know people who do it this way every time as well, so it's completely up to you and how you work. Another thing that you could do is to do a length of yarn initially that's 6 times the width of your warp, so that when you come to this end here, you can then come round the corner and go all the way back along again, and that will give you an extra secure header. But again, it depends what yarn you're using and how slippery it is and how much you think that is necessary. So this is Twisted Header Take 2. As you can see, I've flipped the loom to landscape, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing with it just up on its side. So with the looped end up at the top, you're going to take the top thread and just slide it underneath that first warp thread. Make sure that your ends are nice and even, and then using the twisting and tucking technique, you're going to twist and then tuck under the second, and then twist and tuck under the third. And I just find using the loom in this orientation, it's easier to select your next warp thread that you're going to be tucking that twisted header underneath, and you can see that I'm now doing it a lot faster. But it is completely up to you. With weaving, there really is, you can know how other people do it, but there really is no right and wrong way. If you're getting the same results, then you've got to just do whatever feels right to you, whether you work from right to left, from left to right. People weave from bottom to top or from top to bottom. It's very, very flexible. Now at this end one here, I'm just going to give it one last twist. I'm going to thread the bottom one through there. It doesn't matter if you do the top or the bottom first. You could push it down slightly first as well. And this thread has come out over the top of that last warp thread, so we're going to go under, over, just a few threads. I'm going to pull that up there, pull this through, and then I'm going to do the same, but weave it over the top, so it's coming out underneath. So I'm going to start by going over, under, and just lose that loose end out of the back there. And then you can pull it down with your fingers, or you can beat it down with your fork. I'm going to now flip it the right way up, and you can pull that line of twisted header down to the bottom there, and just pull those loose threads through, and just maybe cut them a little bit shorter. So now you have got a nice solid base to start your weaving on, and when you come to taking your warp off the loom, all of those threads are going to be sandwiched in place, so you won't have to worry about your weaving slipping down further down the warp.